theory is one thing and relatively easy, but to apply them and practically use a principle and have the adjudicator by that from you is a like is something that is way more methodical and requires for you to pay. Have some solid understanding of what principles are and how they are debated, right? Meanwhile, can somebody tell me, is right to education a potential? Everybody should get quality education. Is this a principle? Anyone?
This is more of a right, I think, that everyone has equal access to.
I think it's right to quality
Okay,
education stems
okay,
from
it's
the
a
right to quality.
yeah.
Ma'am, I think that it's just, I mean, that's a common thing, and the principle is the principle is the right, I suppose.
Okay. All right. Others inputs?
So right to education should be a principle, as it's something that everyone should be able to get no matter what their position is.
Yeah, I think it's also a principle because you're talking that it's like morally, like it's a moral thing for like everyone to like get an education. It's their moral right. It's their basic fundamental right. And it's only morally correct if everyone gets it, an education.
Okay. Hear me out on this, right? I hear you all, but hear me out on this. Everyone should have quality education is a claim I'm making. Consider me a debater. What am I saying and how do I weigh this? I think this is nothing better than like a good opinion. And a good opinion does not always equate to a principle. I hope you understand that, right? I can say everybody should always eat healthy. And you might say, it does look like it has some semblance of goodness. So you might equate it to a principle. But then at the end of the day, that is not a principle because quality food is a privilege at the end of the day, right? Even if I'm like super rich and I can make healthy food for myself, I am also a part of hustle culture that needs me to reach my job like before 9 a.m. But then I also have a child to take care of, perhaps if I'm like an adult and I have a family. And then I have somebody else like my father, like some old parents in the house that I have to look after, which means all of my other commitments make me fall short sometimes towards self-care, right? It's not necessarily a principal breach because I'm trying to fulfill some other more immediate responsibilities that I have around me, which is why consuming quality food, as long as you can afford it, is not a principle. It's only a good opinion, which should apply to a lot of people's lives. Do you guys understand what I'm trying to say here so far?
Yes.
I want everybody to confirm either with a thumbs up or unmute yourself and give me a unanimous yes. It just really helps me to understand where you're at.
Yeah.
Okay. Fair. Moving on now. Rian, you have raised your hand. Is there a question so far?
Sorry, ma'am, I was trying to click the
No, that's
thumbs up.
okay. That's
I
okay.
raised my hand back.
Okay. Now, everyone should have quality education is a good opinion, just like how everybody should eat quality food is a good opinion. How is a good opinion different from a principle? Principles are more innate and inalienable. Can anyone tell me what inalienable means?
Something that can't be avoided.
That's right. Also, somebody just tell me I'm on a different tab. I'm recording, right? I hit the recording button.
Yes, you did.
Yeah, cool. Okay. So
Yes,
something
ma'am.
that can, yeah, okay. Something that cannot be avoided and something that we do imperatively need in our life, right? Without which the quality of our life would perhaps be very abysmal and something that we cannot perhaps look up to. So this is to say that whatever is a principle is more innate to me as a human being. For example, if I'm going to live a long life, I have to a long life alone is not enough. I also want a life of dignity, right? Because oftentimes there are circumstances where people prefer to die rather than live. Can you give me examples of when that has happened in the past, some historical episode or like some any hypothetical example of why you think some people find it so hard to keep going? Aryaman?
We could even take the example of Adolf Hitler. He ended his own life in a bunker because he was too afraid to be captured by the police or other worldly powers.
I mean, Okay, given that Hitler was an oppressor and he had done a lot of wrong, this might not be the best example of why some people want to give up, because he was the one responsible for taking away people's dignity, right? And not necessarily having his own threatened. But okay, yeah, people do have existential problems, understood. Samiksha?
Yeah, so some people might face obstacles in life, for example, great debt, no job, or they're just in a rough spot. So rather than trying to get out of that rough spot and back into a better life, they just end it.
Okay, fair point. So yeah, sometimes the audios seem bigger than yourself, because of which you want to be an escapist, and not everybody can always display unflappable courage, and they choose to give up, right? And I'll take just one more response on this question, because it's not a very, this is not the only question I'm going to ask. So I'll give everybody a chance. Rian, what's your no. Yeah, Rian, what's your input?
Ma'am, I also wanted to add on to what Ariman had said. I believe he's talked about Hitler, and well, Hitler, it was actually his self-respect that in which he ended his own life. Because if he had been caught and arrested post the Nazis losing the World War, then he would have lost all his dignity, and he would rather die than live with the failure of knowing that he lost the war. So that's why Hitler killed himself, and that's also one of the reasons many people commit suicide, which is that they see, like Sammy said, they're in a rough spot, and they decide to just end it rather than try to continue.
Okay, all right. Everybody lower your hands. I have the inputs for this question. Now, I won't necessarily use the Hitler example, because Hitler was just somebody who misused the power that they got in their life, because of which they had to face repercussions. Also, the idea of dignity and pride are all like more in their head. But the people and the stakeholders, the stakeholders that I'm talking about, are people who are genuinely like marred by their fate, right? Where they are doing everything they can to make both ends meet, but then even like despite that, they are suffering. Examples of this would be people who are in abject poverty, where they can't help but think about what they're going to eat the next day and the day after that, and how they're going to educate the children, if they're ever going to escape the culture of poverty. When these problems compound, it becomes so overwhelming that you sometimes end up thinking that, oh, it's better to have no life rather than have a life of such debasement, right? But then in other situations, women such as there's a lot of women poets who would tell you the same, right? Through their poetry and through their body of work, they go ahead and talk about the kind of suffering that they have been through because of being put in a patriarchal society, of how restricted they were, of how much they had to immerse themselves into the domestic chores, which perhaps they weren't cut for. They weren't allowed to write, they weren't allowed to pursue fancy careers, they weren't allowed to be scientists because that was a job reserved for a man. So all of these things led to a lot of frustration building up in women, because of which they wanted to give up on everything, up and leave, right? The thing is then that under a lot of circumstances, we can't even enumerate all of them in this 1 hour long session. People do want to give up, right? And this means that a life of dignity is inalienable or innate to me, right? I can't do without it. I'd much rather give up on my life if it has to be, if the alternative is living an undignified life. This is how I say that, look, this is a principle, because without this, the society is just absolutely in black and white. Now, principles, then, are innate, inalienable, and can be applied to almost every human being, right? Now, dignity is also something that applies to even like a prisoner who's perpetuated some deplorable, unspeakable crime, right? So even them, you don't give them third-degree torture or like knock them out of their senses or kill them on the spot wherever you get them and meet them. It's always a convention that's followed in order to even treat prisoners a certain way. They're also given a chance to present themselves in court and plead not guilty or whatever, which means that everybody has the right to dignity no matter what, to some extent. Okay, we know what principles are now. But the more important thing for today is that I'm going to talk about some common principles, okay? But before that, let's talk about utilitarianism, right? We talked about that. Now, can somebody remind me what is utilitarianism? Show of hands quickly. Did I not talk about it in the last session?
I believe we have not covered this topic.
Oh, okay, we haven't. Okay.
Even I think so. We haven't covered
Okay,
it.
I'm so sorry about this. It might have been a slippage. I must have been taking some other session and confused it with this one. Cool. Quickly going over utilitarianism and what that means, right? Now, utility is just how much pleasure are you able to derive from doing something, right? So I play a sport and you play a sport too, but I like badminton, but you like tennis. Not badminton, let's say basketball, right? I like basketball and you like tennis. If I like basketball, my idea of optimal utilization of my time would be playing basketball. But if you had that same hour where you didn't have any academic obligations and your parents allow you to like just move out and play as much as you'd like, then you'd probably go ahead and play tennis because that's your preferred sport. Which means that utility of a particular action depends on the kind of happiness it is supposed to give me, right? Or it is likely to give me. Because I enjoy basketball, I will want basketball over tennis as opposed to somebody else who prefers tennis. This is as simple as that. Utility is where I have pleasure and where I have net happiness when I do something. And something does not have any utility value, like utilitarian value, when it doesn't give me any pleasure, right? For example, you might say that, oh, ma'am, we study and studying doesn't necessarily always give us pleasure, but then we still pursue that, right? So how do you weigh that on utilitarianism principle? I think that's also long-term happiness. You want to secure a job, you want to have a stable life. So even in that case, you're looking for utilitarian value in the act of studying or going to school or coming to these sessions. So we always, when we talk about the practical outcomes, we talk of them in terms of what is going to maximize our happiness, right? Whatever we do, it's always targeted towards maximizing our happiness. Unless, of course, principles come in and tell you that, look, maximum happiness is not always what is required. This is where principles come in and object to utilitarianism. But do you guys understand what utilitarianism is in general now? Just one thumbs up. This might be a difficult concept, so just. Okay, you can ask me questions if you have any. Are there any questions so far?
No, not yet.
Okay, all right. Moving on. Now, where do principal arguments? So pushing utilitarianism is very easy in debates. This is why. You go ahead and tell me something, right? For example, if there was a motion on yes parenting is just this concept of where parents say yes to all of what you want, right? So except, I mean, there are exceptions in yes parenting. Parents wouldn't say yes to anything that might kill you, that might be life threatening. And secondly, they wouldn't say yes to anything that is beyond their financial capability. But other than that, they would say yes to almost everything you want to do in life. So this is yes parenting. Now, if the motion read, this house supports yes parenting, how am I going to create a utilitarian argument around that, right? How am I going to create a practical argument around that? I want inputs from you, two people. This house supports yes parenting. What is your argument from the government side on this? Any argument? Parisa?
A practical argument to support yes parenting would be that the children are happier because they get what they want, and it leads to them making their own decisions and giving them the ability and the space to decide what they like and what they don't like and develop their personality, and it empowers their growth.
Okay, fair enough. So you're saying that when you allow people to just explore any territory whatsoever, they have confidence that they have been able to do what they wanted to do, and through that they are empowered, and through empowerment comes happiness because you feel confident in your skin. Fair
Yes.
enough, practical argument. If I have to conflict this particular, okay, Ariman has another argument. We'll quickly have that too.
Can I act as the opposition?
No, I'm going to do that.
Okay, all right, sorry.
Okay. Any other arguments? No, I think let's just use Parisha's. I think this is a nice one which will serve our end. Cool. So if they are going to say that, look, parents should allow this because people will feel empowered, and it's important for children to feel empowered and independent because that gives them happiness, but also a sense of purpose in life. How do I conflict it using a principle? I will perhaps say that parents have a principle of responsibility on them, which means that until you're 18 years of age or until the age where you have actually developed the kind of mental faculties that you require to make sensible decisions, it should be me who is making the best decision possible in your favor on your behalf as your parent, right? That's principle of responsibility. Because if you bring if you have a dependent on you, and in a relationship, in like, let's say a mother-child relationship or a father-child relationship, the dependent is the child, then it is the responsibility of the parent as an independent actor who chose to have this child to just fulfill their requirements and needs, but also like get them to follow the right direction, because this is your responsibility to make them like responsible citizens, right? Because you chose to bring them to the world, it's also your responsibility to get them to adapt to the same world, right? Which means if you keep doing giving them a yes sir all the time, what's eventually going to happen is that you are going to be blamed for the bad decisions that you let them take, right? This means that more than empowerment, there's going to be problems. But then the principal harm here is that you're shirking your freedom, a principle of responsibility. Give me 2 seconds, I'll be back. There's somebody at the door. All right. Did you all understand what I was, I have, how I have rebutted Parisha's point and how it conflicts with the utility of her point? Okay. Aradhana, is she the only one? Okay, other people as well. Cool. So now, how do you conflict utility without an example? Allow me to explain things to you, right? Utility says that wherever people are more happy, if majority is happy, it's okay for one person to die for the happiness of the majority group, right? A simple example of this would be the like not post-pandemic, but the situation that arises during the pandemic, right? Where vaccines were being developed. Now, what happened was that, the contention here is this, right? That is it okay for a few people's lives to be risked and testing to be done on them for vaccine development if it's going to eventually help the rest of the world through the development of vaccine? So the trade-off here is that we will allow 10 people, let's say, who are the subjects of this scientific study of developing a vaccine. We will allow them to die if it's going to eventually lead to the development of a successful vaccine, which can be used by everybody else. Utilitarianism would tell you here that because only 10 people die and the rest of the world lives, it's okay for you to go ahead and make that trade-off. It's okay for these very few number of people to die because eventually the rest of the world is better off. So if you talk about it in terms of happiness, then it's 10 people's sadness as opposed to the rest of the world's perpetual happiness. We think we will take that perpetual happiness over 10 people's sadness. Do you guys understand this particular idea? How do you then, I'll take 2 inputs on this particular question. How do you think you will rebut this in a debate where somebody is saying something of this kind? They're running a utilitarian argument where they're saying that if happiness and sadness is measurable and happiness is more on our side of the house because there's more people who are happier, then by the measure of this happiness and sadness, we think we should go ahead and proceed with the vaccine trials. It's the same people raising their hands, which I don't quite, I appreciate that they are actively participating, but I don't understand why the people are not raising their hands. So please be actively involved. Aradhana, I'll take an input from you.
Here we can use the principle of equality, where we can mention that happiness belongs to everyone, irrespective of their religion, their color, and nationality. It belongs to everyone, and there should be equality given to all. Yeah, this principle can be used here.
Yeah, okay, you can use the principle of equality, fine. So you're saying everybody's life is important, right? Which is why you should try to preserve the life of these 10 people. But the problem with what you're saying is this: equality of 10 people as opposed to the equality of the rest of the world. whose would you choose first, right? Would you let the rest of the world perish just because you can't make 10 people your guinea pigs in a science lab? That's the problem.
Is on the left.
Parisa, what is your input?
So I think to rebut this argument, I'd basically say that even if it's just 10 people opposed to a vast majority, these 10 people still have the right to live with dignity and the right to life, basically. And putting their lives in danger while knowingly and willingly is unfair to their status as an individual and as a human being.
Okay, all right. I think all of you are hinting in the right direction. Veda, what is your analysis to this?
Okay, yeah, so I agree with both the things that Aradhna and Parisa said, but I also think that you can add that like this is an entire trial process. It's very risky. So you don't know that the vaccine will actually help those like millions of people that you sacrifice these 10 lives for, which means like it's not a very like, yeah, because the vaccine may
So,
not.
no. So the presumption here is that these 10 people will die. So we are imagining the worst possible situation.
Yeah. So if these like 10, okay, yeah, okay.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, let me just weigh in on whatever everybody has said so far. Everybody lower your hands. I'll ask you more questions. So now whatever is being saying has been said is fine, right? What Parisa is saying that look, everybody has a right to dignity, right? You just can't subject them to some sort of torture just because you want to ameliorate the situation of the rest of the people. And the same thing goes when it comes to equality, right? How do you choose who these 10 subjects are going to be? That's a legitimate concern to raise. You go ahead and say, who are these people who are going to be the subjects? If you choose to pay these people for the scientific experiment, then maybe it's going to be the poor people who you're going to target, right? Because they need the money from the experiment. So they're willing to risk their lives because they have absolutely no other means of making a living, and their life is like worse than hell. So it's better for them to just risk it and make it better through monetary prospects. But then you are capitalizing on somebody's misery, right? You're not giving them the equality that they require. What is the selection procedure going to be after all? And how do you determine who is a suitable candidate for such a sacrifice? But then secondly, what is being run here is dignity. Everybody has dignity, fair, but then what proposition will say is that the dignity of 1,000 people is still better, like more important than the dignity of 10 people, right? You wouldn't have the entire human species perish, you won't let it fizzle out just because you couldn't subject 10 people to some sort of like a torture. It's better to save some rather than have everybody die in the absence of a vaccine. How do you respond to that? Whenever there is a comparative, see, the problem with utilitarianism, and this I have learned from other senior debaters, is that they always try to measure happiness and sadness, right? And how do they measure it? They say that, look, the happiness of one person is less than the happiness of 10 people, which might not always be the case. Remember this, right? For example, 10 people, they're super rich. They know they possibly ride to their schools or like colleges in Cadillacs. They're used to Cadillacs. They're used to super fancy cars, sports cars, whatnot, right? But I might be a person who comes from a low income background, and my father, somehow their employer got kind and were feeling happy that day. So they chose to just let my father give me a ride in their Cadillac, right? Now my happiness while I'm riding that Cadillac, which is borrowed from my father's employer, is way more perhaps than the happiness of those 10 people who are so used to Cadillacs that it's like breathing for them, right? And they just feel as much excitement from riding a Cadillac as they do while breathing. It's so normal and natural to them. So where do you think there is better happiness in this instance? Is it that one person who has more happiness than the 10, or do you think the 10 people still have more happy than this one person? Ekam Jyoti, yes.
I think since the other 10 people, as they're so used to these fancy Cadillacs and all those fancy cars, it is important to also look at the happiness of that single person. Just like in the example you were giving earlier, if for a vaccine people are tested, there are 1,000 ways in which that could go wrong, and even those 10 people could like die, and then they'd have to get like new people to perform those experiments on. If those 10 people die, more will have to risk their life. So isn't it just better if it's said no one would suffer? We actually need to see both sides, and we actually need to think about how much is it going to harm that one person and how much it might harm those 10 people. So we can't really measure happiness and sadness. We need to think about the whole picture here, and that is we need to respect the dignity of a person who is about to risk their life for the vaccine development. But we also need to see if there is a possible way out where nobody will actually get hurt.
Okay. Okay. No, the last line that you said is not what is not like a line that can be an argument that can be pursued, right? You can't say that, oh, it's better to find alternatives. See, when you're given a motion, you don't get to question the feasibility of that motion. You don't get to say that there can be alternatives to vaccine development, because motion might even state that developing a vaccine is the only possible way out. In fact, it is, right? How do you
Yes,
escape a
ma'am.
pandemic if in the absence of a vaccine? Which means that you can't make these. I mean, this is almost a concession to the need of a vaccine. If you go ahead and say that, look, we need to find alternatives. Here, the simple trade-off, and this is the only trade-off that you can work on, is this: you either let these people be sacrificed and develop a vaccine, or you wait for everybody else to also just die, if that has to be the case, because you can't decide who the subjects are going to be. Principally, it's okay for you to just kill any utilitarian idea and say that on a principle level, we think even if the world is coming to an end, it's not fair for these 10 people to be subjected. We are okay with the world dying out like this, because at least there is no principle breach. There is no, heavy conscience which gets pricked every now and then for the survivors who had to get 10 people to just die in order to survive.
Yes, ma'am, that's true. But also, like the people that they select, I think it would be better if those people would, if some people would actually they would actually want to risk their lives if they actually volunteer for that. And so that way you can't
Okay.
really blame it on somebody. If
Okay.
somebody is
Another.
willing to take that risk, then that is much better than selecting 10 random
I
people whose
understand
lives
what
will be
you're
risked.
saying. I have a clarification to make here, because I think this will confuse others as well. Everybody listen to me very carefully. When you're running principal arguments, and tomorrow no, day after tomorrow, we're going to do types of motion, so you will understand this better. Whenever we're running principal arguments, we do not get to call the shots on how something will be done, right? So when you're talking about vaccine development, and when you're talking about the people who are going to actually become subjects for this vaccine development, you do not get to decide as a debater what kind of people should be selected. You just have to presume that this is generally anybody randomly being selected, or presume who are these people likely to be, right? So nobody is of course going to arm twist you into doing this. Most likely it's going to be a voluntary subscription, because nobody of course forces you for a scientific experiment. So you can possibly say that, look, voluntary subscription will happen, because in status quo people do respect things like consent and informed consent and all of those things. But then you can't say that something should happen so specifically and just as we are saying it. That is not a privilege that you have. You have to debate on in terms of likelihood, what is likely to happen, who these people are likely to be, and then what your decision or principle take is on the argument. I hope you guys understand this.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, there's not there's not a lot of legwork that you can do in terms of defining how things should happen, and that they should happen exactly how you want them to happen. In principal debates, in policy debates, you can do that. I will tell you which which motion calls for a model or a policy debate that will happen tomorrow. Let's not confuse ourselves right now. Okay, Veda, what's your input?
Yeah, so about your earlier question about the 10 people versus one person, you said that if they're used to driving those rich cars and the one person may not be used to it. So I think the one person's happiness would be greater, because if you're used to something, you're not going to be excited for it every single day. It's not going to be the most valuable thing to it, because you're going to start taking it for granted. However, that one person is not taking it for granted. It's like having okay, this is a really bad analogy, but whatever. Like having dal chawal for a week and then suddenly getting ice cream. So you're obviously going to look forward to the ice cream. Whereas if you're having ice cream every single day, you're just going to lose value in it like altogether. And second, for the voluntary thing, I think people don't really have choices because no one wants to willingly die. So like you said, it's more likely to be like minorities or like poor people who don't have another choice, but would rather like take this risk for
Yeah,
monetary.
excellent. Yeah. Okay. That analysis tells us that Veda is not trying to push a narrative which is unlikely to happen in the society. This is how it's supposed to pursue debates. You think about what will happen, right? If this is the society we are living in and vaccine development happens in India, who are the people who are going to be selected? The ones, I mean, even if you're voluntarily doing something, there is some other incentive to it, right? For example, here the incentive is getting money out of this scientific experiment for being subjects. Now, this is a sort of like a survival instinct that I have, which tells me to just like take my best shot at getting some money. You are exploiting that poverty that I am like a victim of. So it's not really voluntary subscription. But other than that, what you said initially is also like supremely important, something I was going to come to. Analogies. Analogies are super important and they have to be as basic as the one that Veda shared, right? Of like, let's say the dal chawal and like the ice cream comparative, because it automatically makes the adjudicators understand where you come from, right? I'll come to that later. First, let me just clarify this point that I was making between 10 and 1%, right? When there are 10 people, they're not likely to be more happy, or the net happiness that we get out of these 10 people is not necessarily more than the happiness of this one person, right? And this is something that you can prove in different circumstances. It's not just this example that I've given. For example, if you apply the same understanding to the motion that we have at hand of vaccination, then what we can talk about here is that, look, when somebody perhaps the 10 people who will be saved by the vaccine, no, I'm sorry, the rest of the world that does get saved by the vaccine, we don't know if their happiness is going to amount to what the happiness of these 10 people would be if you allow them to not be subjects, right? This is to say that these people who are going to survive because they have access to a vaccine now, again, they're going to take it for granted, right? That, yeah, something bad happened, scientific advancement was done. Of course, poor were at stake, but who cares? We are out of the problem now. We are not necessarily extra grateful for what happened because we always knew science was advanced enough and vaccine was going to come about anyway, and we were not going to be the subjects. So we don't think net happiness is is humongous on their side. But then those 10 people who had to die, they legit died, right? Their families suffered. And then people who identified with these other people who died because they were from the same community, they were equally poor, they were equally marginalized, they also lament the loss of these 10 subjects, right? Perhaps there's a lot of people in the society that lament the poverty upon which like preyed on these people and eventually led to their death, right? So perhaps we collectivistically mourn the the necessities of life and what they get us to do, even kill us eventually. So maybe the society is worse off, right? Maybe you have a vaccine now and you have survived, but then in your heart, your conscience is constantly pricked, right? You don't know what to do with this burden of having killed 10 people in order to save your lives. We think it's a collective dip that people's conscience or like morality takes in eventually, which means a lot of sadness perhaps might be rife in a society, right? But then even if you consider people are selfish and people don't care about somebody else's death so much, then we have already told you that they take it for granted, right? Their lives being saved from the pandemic is not something that makes them ecstatic or like gives them exuberant happiness. Do you all understand this idea now as to how just more people being there does not mean more happiness or more sadness? And then that one person's sadness can literally drown the world. I mean, think of it like that, right? There is one person who's gone through the worst things possible in life, cool, and there's another person who has also been sad, but then of course there's no metrics of measuring how sad a person is, which is why we think it is not fine for you to say that 10 people's happiness is going to be more than one person's happiness or vice versa. It's always comparative, which is why utilitarianism can be taken down. You just go ahead and say that the principle that utilitarianism works on of measuring happiness and sadness in numbers according to numbers and the number of people is actually a wrong metric. That is not something that always happens, right? But secondly, on the idea of what Veda shared, and I really liked, and I want you to know, right? Any principle when you're running it, again, this is something that I get from other senior debaters from my own circuit. Anything that you want to run in within principles, it has to be the work of your rhetorics. Yes, I mean, there has to be like some skillful oratory that goes into convincing adjudicators about your principles, right? For example, if I have to talk about the freedom of responsibility in that initial examples, example, I'm sorry, of parents going ahead and letting you do whatever you want to, I have to convince the adjudicator. How do I do that? By making my principle as grounded and as relatable as I humanly can, right? Which is to say that I will not just talk about panel freedom of responsibility means I am the adult in this relationship, the other person is a dependent because I'm their father, I should take care of them, care of that. This is what society tells me. None of this appeals to people. It's too objective, it's too matter of fact sort of an explanation. But if I go ahead and say this, panel, consider there is a parent, consider there is a child, the child has no alternative, the child has no informed sensibilities of his own, but also he does not have enough experiences in life to make sane decisions for themselves. The child is also under enormous peer pressure. They're being made to do something that they wouldn't have otherwise done, but because they want to be accepted by their peers, they're doing it and they're seeking permission from the parent. In this situation, panel, the child is really, or the child's safety is entirely reliant on the parent's censure of should a child do this or should they not do it because it's harmful for them. At a point in time, the parents also suspend this responsibility of theirs of showing the child the right path when they are being like misled by somebody else, an outsider who doesn't care enough for them. We think it's a grievous problem in the society because now young people in the society have absolutely nobody to cling to or nobody to fall back on for sane, sensible, and ever rational advice. Now, the latter definition and understanding and of freedom of responsibility will tug at your heartstrings more if you were listening to me at all in that is because I have given you so many examples, but then also grounded this in reality. That there is this 10-year-old, they have friends, the friends pretend to be super cool, they want you to be super cool. You don't want to be that person who is super cool, but then because you want to be accepted, you are going to do what they want you to do. What is the only way you can escape this particular like web of delusions and deception? Your parents restricting you temporarily feeling bad, but in the long term being benefited. That's freedom of responsibility for you in a nutshell. But it's more appealing because one, I use some rhetorics here, right? But rhetorics not in terms of saying, oh, the other side is stupid panel, we don't know what they're saying. I think a lot of people waste their rhetorical ability in just trying to demean the other side and by targeting the person and not the argument. That's bad debating. But when you go ahead and target, use your rhetorics or avail them in order to make a situation be understood better or to emotionally charge a particular concern, it just is conveyed better to the adjudicator as well. Again, when I go ahead and tell the adjudicator this and give the dimensions and the explanation that I give to you of this child suffering, then the adjudicator understands the need for parental advice and sometimes a parental rejection for long-term gain, right? But secondly, you want to make your argument when you're running principles, particularly, you want to make them visceral, right? You want to make them visceral. Does everybody understand what visceral is? Visceral is just like when you make it very, very visual and graphic. So, I mean, graphic, don't make problematic things graphic, okay? I mean, don't talk about violence and like in graphic terms, but then to talk about how a child suffers, right? What makes them suffer? Like perhaps envision a school setting and how peer pressure operates and how dooming peer pressure can get. All of that is conveyed better when you make it visceral, when you make it real life, and when you charge, again, like I said before, when you make it, give it a certain emotional valence that it did not have before. So that's how you run principles. Definitely on viscerality of the situation, but also grounding them in real life and how a certain sentiment feels like when you actually experience it firsthand. But then another way of convincing people around you that your principles should stand is of telling them to put them in a particular, like telling them to put themselves in a particular situation which is problematic, right? For example, tell the adjudicator panel, imagine yourself as like this child, right? Or perhaps if they're too old to imagine themselves as a child, tell them to imagine themselves as this parent, right? Or like somebody, as a parent, and then you give them a situation to ponder upon. Would you have your child be influenced by peer pressure, and would you still say yes to them? By doing this, what you're doing is that you're putting them in the shoes of that person who is going through the dilemma, which is why the principle will stand better now, because the adjudicator understands them. And of course, selfish and narcissistic that we are, all of us, we always like are appealed by something more when we have to put that situation on ourselves, because we want to save, self-preserve ourselves more than, and that's why it resonates more with us in that case. Is that understood how to run principles effectively and what the analysis should look like? Okay. Most of the times, I'm not even sure if everybody is listening because a thumbs up is really not a lot of work, but it doesn't quite happen too often. Cool. All right. Now, another thing is of analogies and thought experiments, which are also used for principles, which I'm going to come to. But so far, any questions?
I don't think so.
No questions.
Okay, fair enough. On to your analogies. So everybody understands what analogy is now, right? Because Veda gave us an example. Analogy is just basically something happens and then me equating it to some other situation, but a simpler situation more often than not. For example, riding Cadillacs or like expensive cars is not a relatable phenomenon for everybody because not all of us have those expensive cars, right? So an easier way of communicating the same issue would be of me giving you a situation in which everybody finds, which everybody finds relatable. For example, eating regular food, staple diet that we have, mostly what Veda said was dal chawal, probably because she thought that that is something that everybody understands immediately in the Indian context. And then ice creams, which I think most of us like. So giving an analogy is giving an example similar to a more complex example so that the more complex example stands in the debate because you've made it more relatable through the simpler example. I hope that isn't confusing. Okay, now analogies are important. Why? Because like I said, principles can be hard to run. For example, I might say parents have freedom of responsibility, but somebody else will say that no, the child has right to agency and right to individual autonomy or some such thing, right? In which case, freedom of responsibility might not sound like an intuitively good principle. So for me, for people to buy that principle, I have to give them a simpler example, right? For example, if not the parent child is anyway very simple. So there is no need of an analogy in this situation. But these kinds of example help when you have like bigger problems to solve. I will give you a really nice instance of this, but then for that you need to know, I need you to just tell me how many of you understand Marxism, like the most basic understanding of Marxism. Parisa does. Veda. Arnav does. Okay, others, for those of you who don't understand Marxism, Marxism is just this school of thought which says that, look, wealth should be wealth, whatever wealth exists in the society. Now, this could be property, money, capital in whichever form. It should be equally divided among people. Okay, it's as simple as that. That whatever money is there, just redistribute it and divide it equally. For example, today Ambani has way more money than all of us put together, perhaps, but then Marxism would say, take it away from Ambani, take it away from the rich people, redistribute it equally in the society. Do you guys understand this very fundamental concept and of Marxism now? Give me a thumbs up, whoever did not know about Marxism before. Okay, cool. Now, if the motion says, let's say the motion is this house believes that the world's poor should launch a Marxist protest, right? This is to say that should the global poor launch into a Marxist project where everybody tries to, where they just extract wealth from the super rich people and redistribute it in the society. I hope everybody understands the motion. So poor people just going ahead and becoming Marxists, where they try to extract this wealth from very rich people and distribute it among themselves. Now, intuitively, this sounds wrong, right? I want your inputs on this. How does this sound to you? Do you think it's okay for people to do that now? If they are poor, can they take the money away from the rich and redistribute it? I'll take an input from new people, and I'm going to pick them myself now because nobody's engaging, which I don't like. Myra, mind giving me an opinion on this? No, Myra is not here apparently. Aisha?
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, I think that it's wrong because obviously the people who are rich have worked hard for their money, and we don't have a right to just take it away from them and distribute it amongst the society because the people who are rich have worked hard for their money, and at the end of the day, it is their money.
Okay, great. People have worked hard. That's what Myra says. So intuitively, it's wrong to say that, look, poor people should be able to take it away. Other people, just quickly keep unmuting yourself and giving me inputs. I'm giving you an order to speak in. Okay. Samikshak, followed by Ria, followed by Aryaman, followed by Parisa. Yeah, these many for now.
Well, in another side of this would be that some people are rich because they've gotten from their family inheritance, and if they've not worked hard, then it should be distributed, because it's not fair that they do nothing and they get all of it while poor people work hard. And even though there are some circumstances because of them, they cannot get money even though they work twice as hard as the rich people.
Okay, Samiksha, good point. But I need you all to please only think from one side right now, which is okay. So, okay, yeah, fair enough. Samiksha, if you're saying that you think differently, you say that it's okay because exploitation is what their wealth is built on. Fair enough. Yes, others.
I think just to add on to this point, like people, like these rich people have obviously worked hard, and I think everybody is like hard work should be valued. It's not like people who are poor, of course, like again, they might have worked hard in different conditions, maybe working on farms. But I think rich people have like these other jobs that value them more, and that is more like more helps to boost the economy. And I think this is why that they should like you shouldn't just equally distribute the money. And it's not like to say that the rich aren't giving some portion of the money to the poor. I mean, there are many people who like do fundraisers and things to help out the poor.
Okay, all right. Try to make your responses shorter. I have to engage a lot of people.
1 minute. Aren't we
Uh,
understanding Marxism wrong? Just a minute. Don't we have a very dulled down and condensed definition of Marxism running around?
Who's this, first of all? Who's speaking?
It's me, Parisa. I'm sorry I spoke out of turn, but
Yeah, it's okay. I mean, for now, just let them. I mean, they're younger. There's a younger lot here as well. So even if you're thinking of it as extracting wealth and redistributing it, think of it like that. Even if it might not be the most accurate representation of Marxism,
all right.
because not everybody understands the complexity of Marxism just yet. So it's okay. Cool, Parisa.
Okay, I'm really sorry.
Others, yes.
I'd like to support Samikshik for this point, as everyone might not have worked hard so much, and it could be built out of exploitation. And whereas wherever there is shortage of water or food to eat, rich people can just buy their way through, whereas poor people cannot, and they just have to suffer their way.
Okay. Aradhana.
I oppose the topic of Marxism because how much ever you work hard, you would still get distributed the same amount of money, which is not fair for the person who works much more harder than the others. Well, the others are, just taking this concept for granted, and they would be like, they would anyways get it. So why do you need to work harder? So only if you work hard you can succeed, and that is how people get richer. So I don't think this is a good idea, the good concept, the Marxism one. Yeah.
Okay, just a few more responses. Yeah, Parisa, because you happen to have a view on this. Yeah.
I believe that yes, we should redistribute wealth. A, because poverty is a systematic and oppressive. It's not a natural system that's been created by God or some universal being altogether. It's something that we as human beings have created. It's a systemic thing, right? So therefore, and hard work is not always equal to more money, and all rich people have not worked hard per se. It's a lot to do with how you use. It's a lot of privilege, and it's a lot of things that come from your birthrights, and natural selection does prefer a few people because of the system that we've created, right? So I do believe that that redistribution of wealth is very important. A, b because people who work, let's just say we take an example of a chair, right? Let's say 5 people build one chair, and a sixth person who did not work for that chair, even though they told the 5 people to make the chair, gets to take away the chair and sit on it. Is that something that's fair. It's really not. So that's my
Okay,
whole
good
point.
analogy. Yeah, that's what analogies are for. Okay, everybody, whoever is new to debates, just very carefully listen to the analogies, because that just helps you make your own as well. So this is a simpler way of putting it, right? So they give you an example of 5 chairs and how a sixth person comes in and tells you to make the chair and takes it away with them, right? Regardless of who made the chair. So this is how analogies function. Well done there. Other people, I think there's a lot of other hands raised, but then there's only so many questions I mean, people I can engage. Okay, Arnav, you can go because you haven't spoken so far in the session. And yeah.
Yeah, so the redistribution of wealth should be allowed because it shouldn't be that the rich get to keep their money, even if it's at the expense of people dying, people suffering as a result of poverty. So while it's true, hard work should be rewarded. The when weighing it, it's tackling poverty that comes out is the bigger issue. And this redistribution of wealth should happen in a way that's smooth. So something like proportional taxation, which would allow for the rich's money to be used to improve the conditions of the poor while still giving rewards for hard work. So to rebut that as well.
Okay, fair enough. So I think most of you lower your hands, everybody. Thank you so much for your inputs. Now, most of you are saying that it's okay for redistribution of wealth to happen, but that's possibly because you have some previous experience in debating, or perhaps you're better informed because you're taught things a certain way and you're taught to like think about it from minority perspective. But intuitively, for a lot of other people who are outside of this world of debating, they might say that, oh, right now it's inappropriate for you to just say that, oh, we are going to reconfigure the world and redistribute wealth because there were some biased historical problems in the past, right? Now, the problem in here is that if somebody is intuitively clinging to the idea of letting society operate as it operates under the capitalistic regime, and because everybody has by and large become an adherent of capitalism because that's the only way how, I guess, it's now more like it might be difficult in a debate for an adjudicator to buy this, because an adjudicator is not like a Marxist professional or like a professor. They are average reasonable voters, which means for you to go ahead and get them to agree to your idea of how redistribution of wealth should be there, you might want to run a principle, let's say your right to reparations, right? That these people who are wealthy now, sure, hard earned, whatever, we still think it's ill-gotten gains, right? Because at the end of the day, it's built on like historical marginalization of people, and then it's built on exploitation, this, that, which is why we think it is okay for the people who were exploited to take this wealth back from these rich people. But then this argument and this analysis of reparatory duty is not enough for an adjudicator to buy it. If I want to ironclad it, how I'm going to do this is by giving you a separate example, where I go ahead and say that, look, maybe I equate it to a simpler analogy, right? Where I say that, where I give you an example of theft, because this is something that everybody relates to, right? Now, because this is such a hypothetical situation where you are being told to imagine a world where poor will or suddenly mobilize to redistribute wealth, because it's never happening, it's difficult for everybody to put themselves in that situation and think about things from that perspective. To make life simple for everybody else who cannot think to such an extent and does not have such strong imaginative power, you can just break it down for them through an analogy, saying that, look, if robbery happens and if there's some theft from your place, how do you perceive that, right? Because that's exactly what happened with the oppressed people as well. Somebody took something away from you, and unjustly so. Would you not take it back? Do you not file FIRs every time there is like some sort of like a burglary, like some sort of, yeah, any type of theft that happens? Do you not report it? Do you not seek to get those things back? Do you not seek to punish this particular stakeholder who actually went ahead and wronged you? It's the same idea that applies to that larger principle of reparations as well. This is what I was trying to get to through this example. But then I think Parisha's analogy was also pretty simple and easy. And I hope all of us understand analogies now and the merit in them. Does everybody in this room now understand analogies, regardless of your like past debating experience? Yeah, okay, not many people.
I have a question.
Yeah, just 1 second. Yeah, Veda.
Yeah, okay. So I know that this is like this house believes that motion, and you can't really, but like, is it fine if you talk about that if the poor do become Marxists and extract wealth, like what the world will look like and what that entails? So, like, things like donations might not be happening because like money is very limited, it's equal for everyone, which means people will not want to like spend it on like other people and, you know, like donate for like bigger causes, and like, you know, people like won't work as hard because they automatically know that like the money is going to come back to them. So can we talk
Yeah,
about
sure.
that?
I mean, in a THBT motion, it's not always important that you run only principal arguments. So you can run practical arguments as well. In fact, even principles need to be grounded and impacted at the end of the day. You just can't say that. So every principle works toward an end, right? So even if you're saying that there is a principle of reparations, you choose to bring about equality, right? And you choose to bring about a certain like accountability. That is your impact from this principle. So at the end of the day, everybody boils down to grounding and practical implications. It's okay for you to work on a likelihood analysis there. Cool. I hope that answers.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Okay. So for today, all of you understand, right? Now, this is also called intuition pump, where I give you a more simple example, which you are likely to, I mean, relate to immediately. I tell you about theft, and you will definitely, I mean, I don't think there's anybody in this room who's going to say that, oh, I mean, see, the other analogy, for example, for Risas, where she was saying that, look, 5 people make the chair and then one takes it away because they got it made. It's still fine, right? Because that's what we do with other anything else that we get made for ourselves as well. So maybe you don't relate to it as much. To just completely make your analogy irreducibly simple is to say things like theft, right? I don't think there's anybody in this room who would say that, okay, if I am stolen from, I'm okay with the things not being with me anymore. I will not file a report. I'm okay with people taking away my things. Because nobody will stand by that, it's easier for me to now sell my principle because I've got people on my side through my analogy. And I can build on this analogy to explain this principle of reparation by relating it to the analogy. So that's that. Now I have a couple, just like 2 more things to discuss. I'll start with them day after tomorrow. But for now, that's pretty much it. If you don't have any questions, you're free to leave. If you do have questions, you can stay back. Thank you so much for joining in.
What's my team for the debate?